Hello everyone, my name is Jason. Thank you so much for watching. I would ask that you'd please subscribe if you have not already. And if you find this video useful, do please hit the like button. So recently, for the past 3 months or so, I've become an aquarium keeper, fish keeper. I got into, I've really wanted to have a large aquarium for a long time. And through a series of events back in the fall, we were able to make that happen. And so I now have a 55-gallon aquarium and a 10-gallon aquarium. And I'm pretty excited about it. We've got quite a few fish in it already. So we were studying. We've been doing a lot. When I say we, my kids and I have been doing a lot of studying on fish. And we were really reading about the sleeping habits of fish, and it was kind of described that yes, fish do sleep, but their sleep is different than ours is. And so after reading about it and after watching our fish do what we think is sleeping, one of my kids began referring to it basically as the fish going into low power mode. And so I've been thinking about this concept of low power mode as it pertains to human beings. So we, of course, sleep where we actually go completely unconscious, but we also can have periods of low power mode. And low power mode is something that I would kind of classify as those times when we really shut out the external world and focus only on what's going on in our mind, in our thought patterns, and really examining ourselves and focusing on ourselves. And I did a video just the other day, yesterday I think it was, on what it looks like when the ISFP goes into low power mode, though I didn't refer to it as low power mode in that video. But I just want to talk about the whole concept of low power mode in general. So every one of us in our primary cognitive function stack, we have two extroverted functions and two introverted functions. And those two extroverted functions will either be our first and third or our second and fourth. And the introverted functions will either be our first and third or second and fourth. And we have the ability to favor one of those two middle functions over the other, so our second or third function. So we can be a person, if we have an introverted function as our first function, we can be a person who favors our both of our introverted functions, which would be our first and third, or we can be a person who favors our introverted function as is the first function, and then that second extroverted function. But if your introverted functions are your second and third functions, like it would be with the EJs and the EPs, then you have the ability to favor perhaps one of your introverted functions, or maybe you favor both of your extroverted functions. For those people who favor introverted functions, one or both, more than extroverted functions, this idea of going into low power mode, of focusing on one's own self, one's own inner world, one's thoughts, processing life to a very in-depth, deep level, this is going to be extremely important to them, to those who favor introverted functions over extroverted functions. For those who favor extroverted functions more, the need to have this powering down time or low power mode time is not going to be as paramount. And so you're going to find those extremely extroverted people that you know are going to be the people who need this power down time the least. And in fact, sometimes for those people who favor both of their extroverted functions in their top function stack to an extremely high degree, the power downtime, the low power mode might be something that they even avoid. That might be something that they find to be rather uncomfortable and something that they don't want to participate in. For those of us who favor one or both of our introverted functions more highly, we are going to desperately need this power downtime. It's a time when the person can not just block out the sensory aspects of the external world, right? Like turning off sounds or turning off lights, maybe being in a dark room with no sound in the room. It's not just sensory deprivation, though that can be a huge part of it. In fact, sometimes it doesn't completely involve that. A power down time might be a time when a person turns on music that he or she loves and listens to that music. But the power down time is that time whenever a person is blocking out all external stimuli that are that are not chosen. So you may choose music, or you may choose to be viewing something, but you are not taking in anything that you are not actively choosing. So you're not taking in the thoughts of another human being. You're not taking in activity with another human being. You're not taking in sounds that you don't choose. So low power time is very much a time when the person chooses to block out everything except maybe one or two aspects of experience that they have particularly scripted for that moment. And then during that low power time, what is going to happen in the mind is that those two introverted functions are going to be communicating with one another. So you're looking at, your four possible functions that we're talking about are introverted feeling, introverted thinking, introverted sensing, and introverted intuition. And everyone is going to have two of those in their primary cognitive function stack. They're either going to have introverted feeling or introverted thinking, and they're either going to have introverted intuition or introverted sensing. And so when a person goes into power down mode, they are blocking out the extroverted functions and what they do, and really they're putting them on the back burner and saying, I don't need you right now. I just want to go inward and let my introverted functions process life. And for many people, this time is necessary, both for figuring out who they are, figuring out what they want, figuring out how they want to organize their life or their ideas, figuring out what matters to them and how they intend to proceed in life. Now, for extremely extroverted people, sometimes that internal processing doesn't take place. And so when they're forced to really, articulate, who are you? What is it that you personally want? Not what does everybody else want for you, but what do you personally want for yourself? How do you want to organize your life? What are the ideas or the values that you personally espouse and hold dear to your heart? Forget about what other people want you to think or want you to value. What do you personally value? For the extremely extroverted people, those questions might be really hard to answer. But for the extremely introverted people, that is often processed information. Now, that doesn't mean that the introverted person knows exactly what they want, doesn't mean that they know exactly who they are, but it does mean that trying to figure that out, trying to block out the external world and figure out the answers to those questions is of high priority to the more introverted person. They're going to need to go into low power mode and allow their introverted functions to communicate with one another. Now, let's just take a brief moment to talk about the four introverted functions and what they might be focusing on. So introverted feeling is going to be focusing very heavily on the value system and the identity. Who am I? What do I value? What do I deem to be good? What do I deem to be bad? What matters to me? What kind of person am I? And what kind of person do I want to be? Introverted thinking is going to be much more focused on what is truth? What do I know? What do I believe to be true? What are my evidences for that? And introverted thinking is going to want to go onto a deep dive of figuring out, how do things work? Why do they work the way they do? How can I make them work? And in both of these cases, a human being's identity is very much tied up in one of those two functions. So for the person who has introverted feeling, their identity is going to largely be about the value system and, am I a good person? Am I a valuable person? For introverted thinking, it's going to be more like, am I a capable person? Do I know how to make things work? Do I understand things? Now, for the person who has FI or TI very high, the answer to that question is going to be of great paramount. It's going to be of great value. The lower your FI or TI is, perhaps the less you're going to focus on that aspect of yourself, and perhaps the less you're going to really be able to flesh out your own identity. Your identity, to a large degree, may be tied up in how you relate to other people and where you fit in your group. Whereas for the person with high FI or high TI, their identity is often within themselves and distant from, or not necessarily connected to, how other people see them, or where they fit in amongst their group. Now, the NI, the introverted intuition function, is largely focused on narrowing down ideas, coming up with a plan, figuring out sort of a belief system, a philosophy, determining what do I think. It's an organization of ideas. So NI is organizing both the ideological aspect of the person's life, but it's also organizing sort of the path of a person's life. So it's both figuring out what ideas do I espouse and how do I move forward in life. The SI, the introverted sensing function, is going to be about organizing the physical world, organizing the physical life, not the organizing of ideas like NI is, but organizing the physical world that the person exists in. So with each of these different functions, the higher they are in the person's cognitive function stack, the more importance the person is going to place on them. So someone who has NI as their very first function, like an INTJ or an INFJ, they're going to focus very heavily on figuring out what ideas matter to me and narrowing down on ideas and organizing ideas and creating a path forward, planning the future. And not necessarily the physical future, though it's going to certainly involve that. But planning, what do I envision life being like going forward? For someone with high SI, like the ISFJ or ISTJ, it's going to be very important to organize the physical world, to make sense of everything that you can literally take in with your senses around you and get it in a nice, orderly fashion. In any case, regardless of which of these two functions you have, when you do go into low power mode, those two functions are going to talk with one another, and you're going to be focused on whatever it is those two functions do. So let's just take for an example, if you're the INTP and you have TI and SI, you're going to be focused on those things that SI and TI focus heavily on the world of TI understanding, creating an identity that is tied up in understanding and making things work and figuring things out, and SI organizing the physical world. Now, how those two communicate with one another within the brain of each individual INTP, and then how that builds an identity for the INTP, and how therefore then the INTP allows that to sort of spill out in their words and in their practice and in their life, that's going to be different for each individual INTP. But when the INTP goes into low power mode, you should expect that they are going to be focusing on what TI does and what SI does. And that is going to be true of each of us. Whatever your two introverted cognitive functions are that are in your main function stack, whatever they are, those are going to be your biggest concern when you're in low power mode. Now, when you go into low power mode, will you ever focus on other things? Sure, of course you will. You're going to have pressing issues of the day, things that you're having to deal with that you're going to go into low power mode to figure out. But oftentimes when you go into that low power mode, it's going to be your two introverted functions that you call upon to help you figure it out. Not to say that your particular situation won't require you to call upon some of the other functions to implement it, because it will. So when you're thinking about yourself and when you're thinking about your own low power mode times, think about those two introverted functions and assess in your mind whether or not what I'm saying makes sense. That when you go inward in your mind, are you really focusing heavily on what it is that those two introverted functions do? I think that you'll find that more often than not, that is exactly what you are doing whenever you go into low power mode. And then also, if you want to think about how important is this low power mode to you personally, well then consider this. The higher your introverted functions are in your function stack, especially those who have them first and third, and the more you favor those introverted functions, because you can really at times favor that third function over your second function. If you do that, if you favor those introverted functions a lot, then you probably will relate to the idea that that having regular low power modes is of the utmost importance to you. You could barely function if you did not have the opportunity to do that. And by the way, if you know people in your life, if you're one of those extremely extroverted people who doesn't go into low power mode very often, and you look at people who regularly go into low power mode and you don't understand them, why are they always going off in a room by themselves? Why do they always have to get away? Why are they always leaving people behind? Why are they always wanting to be alone? Please understand that some people just need that. Some people have to have that. And so if you are I almost never go into low power mode person, and you have a close relationship with someone who regularly goes into low power mode, give them that space, give them that time, because they need it. They need it to figure out who they are. They need it to figure out how they want to organize their thoughts, how they want to organize their physical world. They need it to try to understand things. They will not be able to make sense of the world, to organize their thoughts, to organize their world, or to understand who they are if you don't give them this time. And if you're a person who doesn't need this time a lot, that's great, but also ask yourself the question, do I know who I am? If someone asked me, who am I and what matters to me, would I automatically begin talking about other people and saying, well, these people, or I believe this because my friends or whatever. If you are unable to answer the question, who am I and what matters to me, without bringing in the thoughts and the ideas and the opinions of other people, then you're probably a person who rarely goes into low power mode, and that's okay. But at some point, you might want to think about trying to focus on those things for yourself. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're someone like me who's low power mode a lot, I oftentimes can block out what everyone else thinks and be kind of like, well, I don't care. I'm not allowing anyone else's thoughts or opinions or anything to influence me. I am who I am, independent of everyone else. Well, sometimes there might be some value also in breaking out of that and saying, well, let's go, poll the audience, so to speak, figure out what everyone else thinks, because maybe there's some value in that I could incorporate into my identity and into my thought processes that would help me be a more well-rounded and caring person. I hope that you found this video useful. I hope that it was relatively clear. If you have any questions, anything I said that was confusing to you or that I didn't explain well, please leave your comments below and I will try to answer those. Again, I ask that you please subscribe if you have not already. Please click the like video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful day. Bye now.